excited that Rebel News is doing more and more documentaries. What I mean by a documentary is a longer form video with a little more production value where we really drill in deep on a subject. And one of the subjects we've investigated more closely, I think, than almost any other media in Canada, maybe even in the world, is the World Economic Forum run by Klaus Schwab, based in Switzerland. They have their annual conference in Davos. As you remember, just a few months ago, we sent 6 reporters to the annual Davos meeting, and we were pretty much the only independent reporters there. There was one other guy, our friend Andrew Lawton from True North. There were other media there, but they were there in collusion. They were there as sponsors or official participants. They, by definition, could not report honestly on the event. In fact, they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for the privilege of being insiders. Here's a quick reminder of some of the interesting interactions we had on the streets of Davos. I don't think they were ready for independent journalists. I don't think they ever had independent journalists there before. So they just weren't ready to be asked real questions. Here's a snippet of that.
I'll stop now because you're asking me quite aggressive questions.
Well, I think
I didn't ask to be interviewed. This is an interview done against my approval.
The vaccination is also the vaccine.
If this interview
people are force vaccinated, do you think that's okay? That's against their will, and that's WHO pushed the vaccine.
No, I have never called for forced vaccination myself.
Well, one of the 6 journalists we sent to Davos this year was our friend Lewis Brackpool, our British reporter for Rebel News. And you might recall that a few months ago, he produced the first in a series of documentaries. We're calling it a docu-series on what Klaus Schwab calls the Great Reset. The Great Reset. You've probably heard that term used by globalists like Justin Trudeau and even by Joe Biden. That's Build Back Better terminology. Well, we're ready with our second installment of Lewis's docu-series. Here, take a look at the trailer.
When it was first published in 2016, the 4th Industrial Revolution made the case that technology and digitization will revolutionize everything.
One of the features of this 4th Industrial Revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
Making the overused and often ill-used adage, this time is different. Simply put, major technology innovations are on the brink of fueling momentous change throughout the world. In the 4 short years since, technology progressed and moved impressively fast. AI is now all around us, from drones and voice recognition to virtual assistants and translation software.
Where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned, we don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Our mobile devices have become a permanent and integral part of our personal and professional lives, helping us on many different fronts, anticipations, our needs, listening to us and locating us, even when asked not to do so.
Well, there you have it, a trailer on the Great Reset. It's so true. I remember once upon a time, I'm old enough to remember the before times, before technology and surveillance technology was ubiquitous, that there was an idea of sweeping a room for bugs. You know, you would see those in spy movies. Oh, we have to sweep the room for bugs. There's a listening device. Well, now you're carrying the listening device, your phone. It listens to you. If you think I'm exaggerating, read the terms of service for almost every app. The most terrifying includes TikTok, which not only tracks everything you do and say, but looks at your eyes, where you look on the screen, your gestures. It records all of that. There's no such thing as sweeping for bugs. We carry the bugs. We carry our own surveillance systems with us at all time. It's terrifying. Joining us now to talk about it is the host of the docuseries, our friend Lewis Brackpool. Lewis, great to see you again. Congratulations on part 2 of the documentary. This is the scarier one, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. This is the part where we talk all technology. And like you said, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg on technology and what we've been going through. And sort of having a real deep dive into what Klaus Schwab and his minions have in store for us, all laid out in his book. So yeah, it's pretty scary stuff.
Now, one of Klaus Schwab's intellectual muses is a strange fellow, and I say that I don't think I'm being mean. He's quite unusual. He has many very eccentric habits. He even looks he's a very unusual person. Yuval Noah Harari, who's sort of a futurist and a historian and a kind of philosopher. And I think he's having the time of his life with the pandemic and COVID and this fourth industrial revolution, as Klaus Schwab calls it. And he said the quiet part out loud. He says that the big meaning of COVID was it stunned us, it shocked us into allowing total surveillance. And he keeps on talking about surveillance under the skin, which means our biological information. And we see pharmaceutical executives talking about a pill that you swallow, and it literally has a little chip in it. I mean, this used to be the stuff of conspiracy theories, a little chip that radios out, did you take your pill or not? And even our devices, like a fitness device, like my watch takes my pulse. And if I go for a run, okay, I'm glad to know how many calories I burn, but that's connected to my phone, which is connected to the internet. Soon, they say you won't even have a cell phone. It'll be, you could already take calls from your watch. Maybe it's a chip. And I'm not saying this in a conspiratorial way. I'm talking about what Yuval Noah Harari of the World Economic Forum says where we are now. He says COVID was the way to get us to accept surveillance of our bodies. I think he's right.
And when the crisis is over, it's not like we're going back to the place where we started. And it will be the same in so many different areas, in the economy, in the political system. So again, I can't predict which of all these experiments will succeed and what the outcome will be. That's the danger. It could last long after this emergency because there is always a new emergency on the horizon. New surveillance technologies that are now deployed just to deal with this coronavirus outbreak. When it's over, some governments may say, yes, but there is a second wave of corona coming, so we have to be prepared. And there is Ebola, and there is also regular flu. Why not protect people against that too with this new surveillance system? So the tendency would be to prolong it indefinitely. And in this way, the coronavirus epidemic could be a watershed event in the history of surveillance. It's the moment when mass systems of surveillance are established, even in democracies that so far rejected them. And also it's the moment when surveillance goes really under the skin. Governments are now not just interested in where we go and who we meet, but even in what's happening inside our bodies, our body temperature, our blood pressure, our medical condition. So that's really going a step further.
Absolutely. He's very fascinated in the idea of transhumanism, which is a term not many people have heard of, where it's the idea of fusing man and machine, where he's openly said that he wants to hack organisms. It's really quite sinister stuff, really. And, you know, this is the thing. All of this stuff was considered extreme, fringe, conspiratorial stuff from the late 90s to now. And you're seeing it unravel before our own eyes. And what's even more sinister is they openly talk about it. And there are plenty of recordings and tapes online of not just Yuval, but other members of the World Economic Forum almost bragging of this vision that they have in store in the technological sort of advancement they want to push towards. And I don't think the term sinister is even, I think it's too polite to say. I mean, this idea of tracking, it's now actually moved towards more of a compliant based viewpoint. You know, we've seen the clips saying, talking about that pill and saying, can you imagine the compliance? And that to me is just sinister. And we've seen what society has been like for the last 2.5, coming up to 3 years now since the pandemic started. And they've openly admitted that they want to accelerate this type of not only technology, but vision. And I think more and more people are starting to really wake up and go, actually, this isn't a conspiracy theory that I'm being led to believe. And yeah, I think it's great to see that more and more people are now starting to wake up to it.
The COVID-19 crisis could be a really watershed moment, a moment of significant change in the history of surveillance, because surveillance is being revolutionized, transformed from over-the-skin surveillance to under-the-skin surveillance. Previously, governments were collecting data about what we do, who we meet, where we go, what we watch on television. Now, with this epidemic, they increasingly focus on what's happening inside our body. What's our blood pressure, our body temperature, our heart rate. And, you know, during the crisis, there is no time to have a deep public debate about it. Decisions are just being made very, very fast.
Yeah, I was shocked to learn, like I recently rejoined the world of dogs, and I was shocked to learn that dog tags, dog necklaces that dogs would wear if I'm lost returning to this owner, have been largely replaced, at least in Canada, and maybe other countries too, with actually a little microchip that is in surgically put into the dog. I didn't know that was normal and widespread. I'm sort of shocked to hear it. Now, dogs are not people. They don't have rights in the same way, and they're not, subject to their own, they're not their own moral agents. They're owned by people, and that's why they're dogs and not people. But what Yuval Noah Harari talks about is that fusion, and he keeps talking about under the skin, technology under the skin, and then hacking this human technology hybrid. He says that we either now or in the near future will be able to hack people and know them better than they know themselves, and know what they're going to say before they themselves think it, because we know everything from their biochemistry to like if you can get if you can get people to agree to put technology into their bodies, then you can know them better than they know themselves and control them in ways based on that knowledge. And I've always felt eerie about that. Like I've always said, Facebook knows you better than you know yourself because it, unlike you, has never forgotten anything. It knows every email you've ever written or read, every picture you've ever looked at. You have probably forgotten what you read last week, last month, 10 years ago. Facebook never does. Google never does. And so they, in some ways, they know you better than they know yourself, but they're not in your head. It's like the Truman Show when he said, you never knew what was in my mind. But Yuval Noah Harari and Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and imagine with Jeff Bezos, instead of just knowing everything you ever shopped at and looked at, knew deep into your heart, deep into your head, what you really wanted, and selling you things is the least problematic. Controlling you politically, controlling your freedom is what I'm really worried about. That's really what they want to do with the technological side of the Great Reset, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's a lot of talk as well about playing God. He talks a lot about playing God too, and whether you're a man or a woman of faith or not, the idea of playing God and the idea of becoming a God of yourself is something that shouldn't be tampered with. And I think both people of faith or not of faith have kind of understood that there is a fine line between stepping into that kind of realm, because it can be extremely dangerous.
The only thing God managed to create are organic beings. All these trees and giraffes and humans, they are just organic. But we are now trying to create inorganic entities, inorganic life forms, cyborgs, artificial intelligence, and so forth. If we succeed, and there is a very good chance we will, then very soon we will be beyond the God of the Bible.
it seems like this organization and Yuval as well are really trying to push for that. They really want that because data now is the most sacred and the most powerful tool to be used against people and to be used to work out, not only, like what you said, with understanding people and understanding how humans work. So going beyond this threshold and pushing towards this direction is not only scary, but it's menacing. There is something menacing there, and I don't like to, talk in a black pill sense, or depressing, or that kind of side of things. But it seems to me that's the way that it seems to be pushing. And this is one of those things. People say, well, how do you not know that they're looking through it in a perspective that could be good for people? Well, I challenge people to say, well, if you think about it, a cat doesn't know it meows, a cow doesn't know it moos, and sometimes some people don't know that they are being evil. And that's kind of my perspective from going on this deep dive about the World Economic Forum. It's anti-human is what it is. It's very anti-human, and it's almost you're treated, or you're turned into a commodity for their own science, as they call it.
Yeah, you're so right on that. And a lot of the WEF, World Economic Forum oligarchs, explicitly say they want billions fewer people in the world.
Yes.
Just terrifying TED talk with Bill Gates, where he says we need to reduce the number of people in the world by billions. And he's the guy in charge of vaccines. How that doesn't square.
It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to 0. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to 0. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to 0. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to 0. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to 0. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3.
Yuval Noah Harari says anyone who follows the Bible is following some gossipy rumor, a myth in the past, and that's unscientific, and we are our own gods. And when you seek to replace every source of morality and when you seek to replace all religion and say all religion is folly, when you seek to control people, you don't even know what you're going to cause. And you don't have to be religious. I think of what Churchill used to say. Churchill would say, I'm not a pillar of the church. I'm a buttress of the church. I support it, but from the outside. And that sounds funny, but here's what he meant. He meant that I don't have to go to church every Sunday. I don't have to be a deep, faithful believer to understand that the church is good and that it is good for people and that it helps it's the foundation upon which our civil society operates. There's a reason why the Christian West treated minorities better than in other parts, why they were open to reason and science more than in other parts, why the kind of legal system we have, the humanity that we have is the way it is. If you've ever watched that movie by Mel Gibson called Apocalypto, to show you life in the Aztecs before Columbus came, where they sacrificed people by the thousand on those, and blood going down the pyramids. Maybe we need a reminder of what the world is like if it doesn't have a biblical Christian morality. It can be that, but when you replace it with what Klaus Schwab says, what an oligarch says, what a computer algorithm says, what Mark Zuckerberg says, and when you say there is no religion, religion is just bad programming from centuries ago, you have no idea what you're messing with. You're messing with a deep ingrained structure of the West, and if you pull that foundation out, we don't even yet know the chaos that will come. Klaus Schwab and Yuval Noah Harari and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and all of them believe they are gods. And they believe they have the moral right to be gods, and they believe in purging all citizens of their beliefs and replacing the power structure with them at the top. And I think your documentary series is very powerful, and I watched it. And as I said to you privately, you're very careful at documenting what they say and not engaging in baseless speculation. You don't go any further than what they say. It's tempting to say, oh, here's a conspiracy, here's a conspiracy. You don't need to come up with a conspiracy. There's enough conspiracy facts that they're bragging about, that they're writing books about, that they're having meetings about. You don't need to engage in speculation to be bloody terrified. Last word to you.
Yeah, well, exactly that. And, you know, it just takes a few minutes to go onto their website, to see what they're saying, to see the agenda contributors, to see who is involved, to see who are who are pushing this message of Agenda 2030, sustainable development under the guise of climate change and helping the environment, or advancement of technology because it makes things or society easier for you. It doesn't take a lot to find out their vision, and that's the thing. And they've managed to be so smart with how they portray their message, because you know what Klaus Schwab keeps saying, they want to be a transparent organization. They want to be completely transparent, because when they're saying it out in the open, if you repeat exactly what they say to the average man or woman, they'll still look at you as crazy. Yeah. And that's what's smart about it. But you know what? I'm optimistic, as I try to be all the time, especially when going through subjects like this, is a lot of people are now realizing this isn't a conspiracy theory. It actually just takes a bit of time to look into what they're saying, to listen to what they're saying, and to understand that these visions are, in fact, anti-human.
Well, there you have it. Lewis Brackpool, our British reporter and the host of the docu-series on the Great Reset. What's the website where we're going to debut the documentary? I can't remember it offhand. Do you know it?
Yes, it's exposethereset.com. You can visit there and you can catch up with the first episode that's already out, which is an introduction to the docu-series, where each episode is themed almost a bit like Klaus Schwab's book, where he highlights in each chapter societal reset, environmental reset, technological reset, and we're theming it exactly how Klaus Schwab does it and making it digestible. And like what Ezra just said as well, we're not beating off the conspiracy theorist or making assumptions or straying off from what they say. It's all what they say. So yeah, exposethereset.com.
I think it is the most credible, authoritative, well-researched expose of that subject I've seen. I'm very proud. It's coming through Rebel News. Lewis, you've done a great job. It is so hard to tackle these subjects and walk the straight line. You want to show what's really happening, but you don't want to step a toe into speculation, because that's when critics can rightfully say, oh, you're engaging in a fever dream. What's interesting about your first episode and the one that you're about to release, which I've seen already, is that you never step 1 inch outside of the facts we can document. That's why it's so bloody terrifying, is that it's not actually a secret plan. It's a public plan that the media party refuses to talk about. We'll let you go. Thank you for joining with me today. And folks, I got to say, it is a fascinating documentary. It will disturb you, but I think that it is better to know what's going on than not to know.
What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.